Now we enter the Greek classical period, and 480 is a very important date here. 480 is the Persian invasion. It is really the Greek version of World War II. Replace the Greeks with the Americans and the metaphor will make sense. What happens is the Persians invade. You have the Battle of Thermopylae, which is 300, if you've seen the movie. You have the burning of Athens, and then things turn around with the naval defeat of the Persians at Salamis, and then their land defeat at Plataea the following year. What this does is it increases Greek morale. Think of the United States following World War II. We come into the 1950s, suddenly we're innovative, suddenly we have this great optimism that anything's possible because we defeated the great enemy of fascism. So this is happening in Greece too, and it will last for about the same amount of time. In America, it lasts, give or take, about 50 years, and in Greece, it will last, give or take, about 50 years, until about 431, the Peloponnesian Wars. So this increase in Greek morale means that we get Greek classical culture, the time of the great dramatists, the historians, the statesmen, people you would recognize from Herodotus to Sophocles to Pericles. And we see philosophy just starting to take root. Philosophy is going to take a crisis to really start up, but we're just seeing the roots of it developing at this point. And as a result, we start to see sculpture. And yes, we've seen a lot of sculpture up until this point, but this is sculpture that's now hit a point of realism, and it's very quickly going to expand to perfectionism, to idealizing the human form to the point where there are muscles and features that do not exist on the human body depicted on the human body in proportions that are impossible. We'll talk about all of these things. We're also going to see faces that aren't smiling at us, that become more realistic. Slowly, we're going to see emotion building in. So let's get started with that. We're going to start real quickly with the Zeus or Poseidon. And this is a bronze. Now, almost all Greek sculpture, freestanding sculpture, was bronzes at the time. What we will frequently see will be marble copies. I'll point those out as we move along. But what we see is this bronze sculpture of a bearded god. And we don't know who it is because it all comes down to what he's holding. If he's holding a thunderbolt, then he's Zeus. If he's holding a trident, then it's Poseidon. And in the Greek tradition, it's a male sculpture and being depicted nude. Most male sculptures in Greece will be depicted nude because they see the male form as the perfect form. They see the female form as weaker, just on the basis of being female. Obviously, this is outside of Sparta, but this is the general idea. And we get a sense of motion. We see him pointing out in the distance. This was probably part of a larger group of sculptures. So that point where he points off to the right would draw our eye to the next feature in the group. Although today we see this on its own. The eyes would have been inset, just like in ancient times, or more ancient times, with rock crystal and very human sort of glass eyes to complete the illusion. Then we have the discus thrower, and this is our first example of a Roman marble copy of the bronze Greek original. Many of these bronzes were damaged, destroyed, turned into cannons, turned into other sculptures. It happens, and it happened a lot in the ancient world because at times in history we're short on resources and we use whatever we have. So here with the heavy marble copy, we have features that wouldn't be there in the bronze because marble has different characteristics than bronze. For example, we have this piece of stone attaching the calf to the leg, and that wouldn't have been there in the original. But it's necessary because those fingers will easily snap off if this is done in bronze. We also see features such as this tree trunk in the background, which is helping support the weight of the marble, which weighs considerably more than the bronze, especially in this awkward footing. Now, the form is created, in this case, through a series of intersecting arcs. And those arcs are there for a reason. Those arcs are to remind a Greek, and you have to put yourself in the position of a Greek, to remind them of a bow and arrow. Because a bow and arrow has a great deal of tension to it when drawn back, and these arcs are very similar to a drawn bow. So it would give a Greek the idea of potential energy, which is really what you're seeing in this sculpture. And the action here is frozen in a moment at the height of that backswing as he's about to throw the discus. So it's like a spring being loaded with energy and ready to unwind and release that energy. However, we have a problem, which is the face. And that face is not one of a man about to throw a heavy discus as far as he can. Instead, this is the face of someone who's studying philosophy or algebra or listening to this lecture. Kind of deadpan, possibly bored. So it's not realistic. This is what we should see, is a man with that horrible grunting face that we see in athletics, either for a runner or a discus thrower. When we look at the body, we see that they're tensing all of the muscles here. They're trying to show off all of that human potential, all of that musculature, their knowledge of the human body itself. Now, in the Discobolos, that human body is relatively, and I use the term loosely, relatively realistic, as in relatively possible. But that will change as we move forward.